Lessons on Raja Yoga. Prana. The theory of creation is that matter is subject to five conditions: ether, luminous ether, gaseous, liquid, and solid. They are all evoked out of one primal element, which is very finest ether. The name of the energy in the universe is prana, which is the force residing in these elements. Mind is the great instrument for using the prana. Mind is material. Behind the mind is Atman, which takes hold of the prana. Prana is the driving power of the world and can be seen in every manifestation of life. The body is mortal and the mind is mortal, both being compounds, must die. Behind all is the Atman, which never dies. The Atman is pure intelligence controlling and directing prana. But the intelligence we see around us is always imperfect. When intelligence is perfect, we get the incarnation, the Christ. Intelligence is always trying to manifest itself, and in order to do this, it is creating minds and bodies of different degrees of development. In reality, and at the back of all things, every being is equal. Mind is very fine matter. It is the instrument for manifesting prana. Force requires matter for manifestation. The next point is how to use this prana. We all use it, but how sadly we waste it. The first doctrine in the preparatory stage is that all knowledge is the outcome of experience. Whatever is beyond the five senses must also be experienced in order to become true to us. Our mind is acting on three planes: the subconscious, conscious, and superconscious. Of men, the yogi alone is superconscious. The whole theory of yoga is to go beyond the mind. These three planes can be understood by considering the vibrations of light or sound. There are certain vibrations of light too slow to become visible. Then as they get faster, we see them as light. And then they get too fast for us to see them at all. The same with sound. How to transcend the senses without disturbing the health is what we want to learn. The Western mind has stumbled into acquiring some of the psychic gifts which in them are abnormal and are frequently the sign of disease. The Hindu has studied and made perfect this subject of science, which all may now study without fear or danger. Mental healing is a fine proof of the superconscious state. For the thought which heals is a sort of vibration in the prana, and it does not go as a thought, but as something higher for which we have no name. Each thought has three states. First, the rising or beginning, of which we are unconscious. Second, when the thought rises to the surface. And third, when it goes from us. Thought is like a bubble rising to the surface. When thought is joined to will, we call it power. That which strikes the sick person whom you are trying to help is not thought, but power. The self-man running through it all is called in Sanskrit Sutratma, the thread self. The last and highest manifestation of prana is love. The moment you have succeeded in manufacturing love out of prana, you are free. It is the hardest and the greatest thing to gain. You must not criticize others. You must criticize yourself. If you see a drunkard, do not criticize him. Remember, he is you in another shape. He who has not darkness sees no darkness in others. What you have inside you is that you see in others. This is the surest way of reform. If the would-be reformers who criticize and see evil would themselves stop creating evil, the world would be better. Beat this idea into yourself. The practice of yoga. The body must be properly taken care of. The people who torture their flesh are demoniacal. Always keep your mind joyful. If melancholy thoughts come, kick them out. A yogi must not eat too much, but he also must not fast. He must not sleep too much, but he must not go without any sleep. In all things, only the man who holds the golden mean can become a yogi. What is the best time for practice in yoga? The junction time of dawn and twilight, when all nature becomes calm. Take help of nature. Take the easiest posture in sitting. Have the three parts straight, the ribs, the shoulders, and the head, leaving the spine free and straight, no leaning backwards or forwards. Then mentally hold the body as perfect, part by part. Then send a current of love to all the world. Then pray for enlightenment. And lastly, join your mind to your breath and gradually attain the power of concentrating your attention on its movements. The reason for this will be apparent by degrees. The Ojas. The Ojas is that which makes the difference between man and man. The man who has much Ojas is the leader of men. It gives a tremendous power of attraction. Ojas is manufactured from the nerve currents. It has this peculiarity. It is most easily made from that force which manifests itself in the sexual powers. If the powers of the sexual centers are not frittered away and their energies wasted, action is only thought in a grosser state. They can be manufactured into Ojas. The two great nerve currents of the body start from the brain, go down on each side of the spinal cord, but they cross in the shape of the figure 8 at the back of the head. Thus, the left side of the body is governed by the right side of the head. At the lowest point of the circuit is the sexual center, the sacral plexus. The energy conveyed by these two currents of nerves comes down, and a large amount is continually being stored in the sacral plexus. The last bone in the spine is over the sacral plexus and is described in symbolic language as a triangle. And as the energy is stored up beside it, this energy is symbolized by a serpent. Consciousness and subconsciousness work through these two nerve currents, but superconsciousness takes off the nerve current when it reaches the lower end of the circuit, and instead of allowing it to go up and complete the circuit, stops and forces it up the spinal cord as Ojas from the sacral plexus. The spinal cord is naturally closed, but it can be opened to form a passage for this Ojas. As the current travels from one center of the spinal cord to another, you can travel from one plane of existence to another. This is why the human being is greater than others, because all planes, all experiences are possible to the spirit in the human body. We do not need another, for man can, if he likes, finish in his body his probation and can after that become pure spirit. When the Ojas has gone from center to center and reaches the pineal gland, a part of the brain to which science can assign no function, man then becomes neither mind nor body. He is free from all bondage. The great danger of psychic powers is that man stumbles, as it were, into them, and knows not how to use them rightly. He is without training and without knowledge of what has happened to him. The danger is that in using these psychic powers, the sexual feelings are abnormally roused, as these powers are in fact manufactured out of the sexual center. The best and safest way is to avoid psychic manifestations, for they play the most horrible pranks on their ignorant and untrained owners. To go back to symbols, because this movement of the Ojas up the spinal cord feels like a spiral one, it is called the snake. The snake, therefore, or the serpent, rests on the bone or triangle. When it is roused, it travels up the spinal cord, and as it goes from center to center, a new natural world is opened inside us. The Kundalini is roused. Pranayama. The practice of pranayama is the training of the superconscious mind. The physical practice is divided into 3 parts and deals entirely with the breath. It consists of drawing in, holding, and throwing out the breath. The breath must be drawn in by one nostril whilst you count 4, then held whilst you count 16, and thrown away by the other nostril whilst you count 8. Then reverse the process, closing the other nostril while you breathe in. You will have to begin by holding one nostril with your thumb, but in time your breathing will obey your mind. Make 4 of these pranayamas morning and evening. Metagnosticism. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. The word repent is in Greek metanoiet. Meta means behind, after, beyond, and means literally go beyond knowledge, the knowledge of the 5 senses, and look within, where you will find the kingdom of heaven. Sir William Hamilton says at the end of a philosophical work, "Here philosophy ends, here religion begins." Religion is not and never can be in the field of intellect. Intellectual reasoning is based on facts evident to the senses. Now religion has nothing to do with the senses. The agnostics say they cannot know God, and rightly, for they have exhausted the limits of their senses and yet get no further in knowledge of God. Therefore, in order to prove religion, that is, the existence of God, immortality, etc., we have to go beyond the knowledge of the senses. All great prophets and seers claim to have seen God. That is to say, they have had direct experience. There is no knowledge without experience, and man has to see God in his own soul. When man has come face to face with the one great fact in the universe, then alone will doubts vanish and crooked things become straight. This is seeing God. Our business is to verify, not to swallow. Religion, like other sciences, requires you to gather facts, to see for yourself, and this is possible when you go beyond the knowledge which lies in the region of the five senses. Religious truths need verification by everyone. To see God is the one goal. Power is not the goal. Pure existence, knowledge, and love is the goal, and love is God. Thought, imagination, and meditation. The same faculty that we employ in dreams and thoughts, namely imagination, will also be the means by which we arrive at truth. When the imagination is very powerful, the object becomes visualized. Therefore, by it we can bring our bodies to any state of health or disease. When we see a thing, the particles of the brain fall into a certain position like the mosaics of a kaleidoscope. Memory consists in getting back this combination and the same setting of the particles of the brain. The stronger the will, the greater will be the success in resetting these particles of the brain. There is only one power to cure the body, and that is in every man. Medicine only rouses this power. Disease is only the manifest struggle of that power to throw off the poison which has entered the body. Although the power to overthrow poison may be roused by medicine, it may be more permanently roused by the force of thought. Imagination must hold to the thought of health and strength in order that in case of illness the memory of the ideal of health may be roused and the particles rearranged in the position into which they fell when healthy. The tendency of the body is then to follow the brain. The next step is when this process can be arrived at by another's mind working on us. Instances of this may be seen every day. Words are only a mode of mind acting on mind. Good and evil thoughts are each a potent power, and they fill the universe. As vibration continues, so thought remains in the form of thought until translated into action. For example, force is latent in the man's arm until he strikes a blow, when he translates it into activity. We are the heirs of good and evil thought. If we make ourselves pure and the instruments of good thoughts, these will enter us. The good soul will not be receptive to evil thoughts. Evil thoughts find the best field in evil people. They are like microbes which germinate and increase only when they find a suitable soil. Mere thoughts are like little wavelets. Fresh impulses to vibration come to them simultaneously until at last one great wave seems to stand up and swallow up the rest. These universal thought waves seem to recur every 500 years, when invariably the great wave typifies and swallows up the others. It is this which constitutes a prophet. He focuses in his own mind the thought of the age in which he is living and gives it back to mankind in concrete form. Krishna, Buddha, Christ, Muhammad, and Luther may be instanced as the great waves that stood up above their fellows, with a probable lapse of 500 years between them. Always the wave that is backed by the greatest purity and the noblest character is what breaks upon the world as a movement of social reform. Once again in our day there is a vibration of the waves of thought, and the central idea is that of the immanent God. And this is everywhere cropping up in every form and every sect. In these waves, construction alternates with destruction. Yet the construction always makes an end of the work of destruction. Now, as a man dives deeper to reach his spiritual nature, he feels no longer bound by superstition. The majority of sects will be transient and last only as bubbles because the leaders are not usually men of character. Perfect love, the heart never reacting, this is what builds character. There is no allegiance possible where there is no character in the leader, and perfect purity ensures the most lasting allegiance and confidence. Take up an idea, devote yourself to it, struggle on in patience, and the sun will rise for you. To return to imagination, we have to visualize the Kundalini. The symbol is the serpent coiled on the triangular bone. Then practice the breathing as described before, and while holding the breath, imagine that breath like the current which flows down the figure 8. When it reaches the lowest point, imagine that it strikes the serpent on the triangle and causes the serpent to mount up the channel within the spinal cord. Direct the breath in thought to this triangle. We have now finished the physical process, and from this point it becomes mental. The first exercise is called the gathering in. The mind has to be gathered up or withdrawn from wandering. After the physical process, let the mind run on and do not restrain it. But keep watch on your mind as a witness watching its action. This mind is thus divided into two, the player and the witness. Now strengthen the witnessing part and do not waste time in restraining your wanderings. The mind must think, but slowly and gradually. As the witness does its part, the player will come more and more under control, until at last you cease to play or wander. Second exercise, meditation, which may be divided into two. We are concrete in constitution and the mind must think in forms. Religion admits this necessity and gives the help of outward forms and ceremonies. You cannot meditate on God without some form. One will come to you, for thought and symbol are inseparable. Try to fix your mind on that form. Third exercise. This is attained by practicing meditation and is really one-pointedness. The mind usually works in a circle. Make it remain on one point. The last is the result. When the mind has reached this, all is gained. Healing, clairvoyance, and all psychic gifts. In a moment, you can direct this current of thought to anyone, as Jesus did, with instantaneous result. People have stumbled upon these gifts without previous training, but I advise you to wait and practice all these steps slowly. Then you will get everything under your control. You may practice healing a little if love is the motive, for that cannot hurt. Man is very short-sighted and impatient. All want power, but few will wait to gain it for themselves. He distributes but will not store up. It takes a long time to earn and but a short time to distribute. Therefore, store up your powers as you acquire them and do not dissipate them. Every wave of passion restrained is a balance in your favor. It is therefore good policy not to return anger for anger, as with all true morality. Christ said, "Resist not evil," and we do not understand it until we discover that it is not only moral but actually the best policy, for anger is loss of energy to the man who displays it. You should not allow your minds to come into those brain combinations of anger and hatred. When the primal element is discovered in chemical science, the work of the chemist will be finished. When unity is discovered, perfection in the science of religion is reached, and this was attained thousands of years ago. Perfect unity is reached when man says, "I and my Father are one."